Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about the Women's World Cup, I guess women's soccer in general. Um, I almost don't want to make this recording. I don't want to give it more airtime. I don't really want to talk about it, but it's annoying, and I think it sets an awful example for the kids in the country and for people around the world in general. So let's get into it, I guess. So over the past month, the Women's World Cup took place in France. The U.S. women's national team has won the World Cup. They were pretty dominant across the board, beat most, if not all, of the major teams, and have won the World Cup for the second year in a row. And for some context, I actually have enjoyed women's soccer over the past several years. I watched the previous World Cup. I watched the finals in a sports bar that was the sort of local home for the U.S. national team's supporters group, and was excited that they won. And since then have followed the National Women's Soccer League to the point of going to multiple games, including the championship game a couple of years ago. I have owned jerseys from some of the players on the Seattle team. So this is not coming from a women's sports sucks sort of perspective. But the behavior of the women's national team, and in particular Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan, has been embarrassing, to say the very least. And there's a couple of key pieces that I want to get to. The first being that there's been a response to criticism by people in the media and fans of the team, and specifically of Morgan and Rapinoe. There's been a response by them basically saying that the criticism is unfair. And Alex Morgan, most recently, after she celebrated in a game against England by doing some sort of tea drinking pantomime. I don't know what to call it. She pretended she was drinking tea, which apparently was some kind of reference to Sophie Turner and maybe Game of Thrones. I don't really know. But to do that in a game against England after you just scored against them, I don't know how you would expect that to be taken as anything but a diss against England and sort of making fun of them. And her response when she was criticized for it, or even questioned about it, was that, well, men grab their sacks when they've celebrated, and so this is just a double standard. So let's pull that apart. Number one, the reference to grabbing their sacks, I believe, is Diego Simeone, who is the coach of Atletico Madrid, Spanish club team, and Ronaldo, who used to play for Real Madrid. They're local rivals and major league rivals, and so both of them have made gestures that they were, sort of grabbing their crotch as a way of sort of sticking it to the other team. They, I'm pretty sure, owned up to what they were doing, and they were both roundly criticized for it, and I believe were both penalized for it. And so the idea that men do these things and it's not addressed or they aren't criticized for it is utterly ridiculous. I mean, Ronaldo has to be one of the, if not the most criticized people on the planet. Everyone is constantly giving him shit, constantly making fun of him, constantly harassing him for being self-promoting and self-aggrandizing. So I don't know what planet you would have to live on to think that male soccer players aren't taking criticism. Look at any of the major players. Look at Paul Pogba. Look at Ibrahimovic. Look at Cavani. Look at Messi. Look at any of the big stars. They are constantly in for criticism because they work on the world stage. They are dependent on people's watching them and being interested in what they're doing. Their sponsorships and the pay level that they get is all based on how many fans they drive into seats and to watch games. And so they accept the criticism by and large. And you'll never hear them suggest that it's unfair that they be criticized because someone else wasn't. That's just kind of ridiculous given the circumstance that they play in. So Alex Morgan's suggestion that there's some kind of double standard is just ludicrous, and it is makes clear that she lacks sort of a sense of context for what she's doing, which connects into the other point about complaints about pay for the women on the team. There's this argument that basically goes, well, the women work just as hard as the men do, therefore they should be paid the same, which is an argument that makes no sense in the context of sort of a capitalist, competitive industry. There is no place else in the world where you get paid based on the amount of work that you do or the amount of effort that you put in. A McDonald's employee probably works twice as hard as I do, and they don't get paid as much as I do because I drive more revenue for the companies I work for. The companies I work for make more revenue in themselves, and I have a skill set that is harder to find, and so that is what's being sort of rewarded, or that's what's driving my pay scale. So this idea that you can quantify how hard someone works and then you should assign their pay based on that doesn't make any sense. It's about the outcome, not about the effort that gets put in. And it just sort of belies this idea that they are being paid for playing soccer when the reality is that they are entertainers. They are entertainers who need to bring people to watch their games, and whether it's on TV or in the seats, and they get paid because of that. That's where the companies that are going to sponsor them are making their money. That's where the companies that organize the games, the leagues, all of those things, that's where they all make their money, and that's where their revenue comes from, and that's how they pay the players. So you can sort of, there is a legitimate suggestion, if she wanted to make it, she meaning Alex Morgan, that it's okay to be brash and outlandish in terms of her celebrations because people either love it or hate it, and either way they'll come to watch the games, and so that'll drive more revenue and that'll make more money. So I could totally understand that argument. I see that argument regularly in the UFC, in mixed martial arts, where people recognize that whether they are loved by people or hated by fans, either way, if it drives more people to watch the fights, that makes everybody more money, and they're perfectly happy with it. They just want attention. They don't care whether it's good or bad attention. But Morgan wants sort of only the good attention, and then wants to be paid irrespective of how much attention she and the other players on the team are driving. So makes zero sense. And then on top of it, there are constant complaints about, or constant comments by her and more by Megan Rapinoe about the politics of the country, and that there's no way that they're going to go to the White House, and all of this sort of mostly somewhat sort of feminist argument, and somewhat around the LGBT sort of community arguments that I don't even know what the argument is exactly because it's never really stated. It's just sort of put out there that as a woman and as a gay woman, Megan Rapinoe hates the president. You're welcome to hate the president, but no discussion about what he's actually done that's driving that response means nothing is going to change. And so all you're doing then is driving fans away from the game, lowering the amount of attention that the games are going to get, lowering the amount of revenue that the the league is going to make or the team is going to make, and then reducing your actual pay. So at this, you can't do that, and at the same time complain that you're not paid enough. It doesn't make any sense. It's very similar to the sort of NFL, anthem kneeling. Megan Rapinoe has actually refused to sing the anthem, or at least now she's standing for it. But all of this being done in the context of playing for the national team when you're supposedly representing your country is ridiculous. The reality is that Megan Rapinoe especially is not representing her country. She's representing the part of the country that she likes and she agrees with and thinks treats her the way she wants to be treated. That's not representing your country. The whole point of national teams is that you represent everyone. It's a way to bring people together instead of divide them. And so, again, it's just a misuse and misunderstanding of what they're actually doing. It's sad. And, the end result of all this is you end up with these World Cups that generate a lot more attention. They generate more attention because they are largely a sort of drama and spectacle. And so typically you get a lot more people watching the World Cup because there's a lot more media attention to it. You get people who know little to nothing about soccer watching the World Cup and are interested because it's the U.S. versus France or U.S. versus England, and everybody can get sort of excited about it. But then they're exposed to all this negative commentary and divisive commentary, which is going to lessen the likelihood that watching the World Cup is going to translate into them watching the women's leagues, whether here or in Europe, and driving higher pay. So again, they're sort of this self-defeating behavior that is sort of wrapped around this whole World Cup, and because so many of the people watching these games are not soccer fans, then even the commentary within Fox Soccer was super superficial, like very high level, no real in-depth commentary about how well they were playing or not well they were playing. There were constant, major defensive errors that were not discussed at all in the commentary surrounding the game. And so it turns it all into this sort of fluff piece that, while short term gets higher ratings, longer term means very minimal growth and very little sustained growth for the leagues in between the World Cups, which is fine. Personally, I don't have a problem with that, but it is not going to do what the players are hoping it will do, which is generate more sustained interest and generate more sustained revenue, more sponsorships during the year and things like that, which will increase their revenue and their pay. So the saddest sort of piece of this all to me, because if the players want to make these choices and sort of accept the consequences of them, that would be perfectly fine with me. I have no objection to you making a stand and accepting what comes with that. But the saddest part to me is that these are role models and supposed to be examples, especially for young girls, but for kids all around the country. And you have a group of people who have the privilege of playing for the national team, the opportunity to truly represent their country, the opportunity to really bring people together for a brief period of time at least, and provide a way for people to sort of focus on something that they have in common instead of focusing on their differences. And we're missing that opportunity. And we also have just a complete apparent lack of gratitude, a lack of appreciation for the fact that they have this opportunity to represent their national team and represent the country. The lack of appreciation for the fact that they get to play a game and get paid. Now, they may not be getting paid as well as their male counterparts, but they're still making good money, especially the people who are playing for the national team and playing for a local club team and also getting sponsorship opportunities. Like, they're making a good living, way better than the vast majority of people in the country. And they're getting paid to do that while playing a game. So the lack of sort of understanding of the context and the appreciation for the blessings that they have been gifted with the physical ability. Yes, they train hard. Yes, they work hard. I'm not suggesting they don't, but you also can't suggest that they weren't sort of born with a level of ability that other people simply don't have. You can have millions of people train just as hard as they are, and they are not going to have the skill level or the ability level that these players have. And to not recognize that is A, setting a horrible example for kids around the country, and B, actually diminishes their enjoyment of those gifts. And they are, at the end of the day, gifts. If you sort of believe in a sort of spiritual component of the world, then they are actually given for your enjoyment. That's what a gift is. And so if you are using it, but you're not actually enjoying it, then it sort of defeats the purpose. And it hurts you, and it hurts the person that gave you those gifts. Because if you went and gave a small child a gift and they just sort of used it in a way that brought them, pain or made them upset, you would be sad. You would be sad that you had given them that gift. And that's really where they leave all of us. They leave us divided and disappointed and upset, even though they've won, which is probably the saddest sort of commentary that you can make on it all. So I think I'll leave it there. Again, as always, appreciate and invite your comments, response videos, and we'll be back with a new video soon.